wanted to take a few minutes today to talk to you about backups, archiving your images, all that good stuff that is really easy to overlook but is absolutely critical, especially if you're running a photography business and in particular shooting weddings or other one-time only events that you don't get a second chance to redo. Those kinds of things are critical to have good backup practices on your photos, because just imagine you lose somebody's wedding photos and you can't get those back. I actually had a friend message me the other day having a mild breakdown because as they were exporting photos from Lightroom, the computer died and it looked like it wasn't going to be salvageable. Now, luckily, I think after some work they were able to recover most of that, but still, that's a situation you don't want to find yourself in. So, what's a good backup practice? Well, I know a lot of people keep the images on the actual SD card or CF card until they're done editing them, and that's at least something, so you can go back and have those original files. But one of the industry standards, and this is even outside of photography, it's a general data maintenance backup program that is recommended by a lot of people in the computer world, is a 3-2-1 concept. So basically what that means is you have 3 copies of your data, and that might sound like a lot, but the reality is hard drives, flash cards, all of that is media that will die at some point. It's just a matter of time. So you have 3 copies of your data. One of them is your working file, so it's actually what you're working on in Lightroom or whatever editing software you use. That's the stuff that you're using to edit and create your finished products. Then you have 2 backup copies of your images, and those 2 backups should be on separate media. Ideally, they say, one of them should be like a hard drive and the other should be a tape drive. Realistically, I don't do that just because it's more than I want to deal with. Finding good tape drives and trying to sort all that out and make it work is just kind of a pain to me. So all my backups are based on physical hard drives. I don't use the solid state drives, SSDs, just because a physical spinning hard drive, you will get some indication that it's going to fail before it completely fails, most of the time, unless there's a massive crash. That doesn't happen very often. What usually happens is they'll start slowing down or making a lot of noise or overheating, giving you some kind of warning that that drive is about to fail. So you have the opportunity to pull the data off before it's completely gone. With an SSD, a solid state drive, it just stops. Cold turkey, nothing. So most people, and I, don't recommend using solid state drives for your backup files. So you got 3 copies, your working files, 2 backups. The 2 backups should be on separate drives, and ideally in separate physical locations. So for me, I have a backup in my home office, my little data room, as well as offsite. How I do that is I use what's called an NAS system, a network attached storage. And there's a lot of different options. If you just want to use a hard drive, external hard drive that's plugged into your computer, that's fine. Just make sure that you have another copy set up somewhere else. And you can have Lightroom do that automatically. And I believe Capture One probably has the same kind of setup. But when you import your files, you can set it up to actually make a duplicate copy on another location. So that's at a minimum what I would recommend, is to have an external drive where when you import your photos, it automatically goes to that external drive as a backup, as well as onto your local system drive where you're working on the files. So how to set all that up and what do I recommend? Well, I'm a fan of the Western Digital drives. I've had a number of them over the years. I've built 3 of my own computer systems that are all based on Western Digital drives. The reality is any drive manufacturer is going to have batches of issue drives that come up, and if you do read the reviews on Amazon or wherever, there's always somebody who says, well, the drive died after a month and I'm never buying Western Digital again. They'll say the same thing for Seagate, they'll say the same thing for Toshiba. Any of these drive manufacturers will occasionally have some drives that go bad, and that's why you want to have more than one copy, because the risk is always there. You can't get away from that completely. It's just not possible with current technology. So I've been lucky. I've never had a Western Digital drive fail on me. I did have one external drive that started making a lot of noise, and like I mentioned before, I copied everything over and decommissioned that drive and never had any issues. But as far as the external drives, I am a big fan of these. This is the Easy Store drive. This is actually an 8 terabyte drive. Comes in a snazzy little box like this. Actually, little secret, this is an empty 8 terabyte Western Digital drive. I actually pulled the hard drive out to put in my NAS system. Don't recommend doing that unless you actually know what you're doing and understand that you're voiding the warranty on that drive. I did it anyway. So these are awesome little drives. I actually have, even aside from the ones that I've pulled the drives out of, I have 2 of these hooked up to my system as external drives for regular use on the local backup. In addition, I have a NAS system, and this is the one I have. Actually, I've got a 4-bay version of this. This is a 2-bay, which means there's 2 hard drives in it. This is the TS231P from QNAP. A number of different companies make these kinds of systems. Western Digital has their own called a MyCloud system. Synology is another popular one. They all do basically the same thing, but basically what it is this plugs into your wireless router as a network drive, network attached storage, where you can dump all your files over to the network, and it's stored on this little box in a closet or wherever your Wi-Fi system is. If you're crazy like me, I actually have a network switch that has a whole bunch of other things that I'm routing wires over to my TV and my Roku and all that stuff. Anyway, it's attached to the network through the Ethernet cable that goes out the back of your computer if you have it, or you can do it over Wi-Fi, that's fine too. But this has a lot of other benefits beside just being a backup. It's kind of cool because I can actually download an app on my phone so that no matter where I'm at, I can access all the files that are on there. So if I'm out at a shoot and a client asks me, hey, did you ever shoot a photo at this location or whatever? And I can go into my library and say, yeah, here, pull it up on my phone and show them examples of my entire portfolio. I have access to all of that pretty much any time. As long as you've got a good Wi-Fi or good cell signal, you can get into that library and pull up those files. Additionally, you can use this as a media server inside your home. So I actually have 2 of these systems. I've got a Western Digital MyCloud and the QNAP system. My Western Digital one I've got set up as a music server, so all the music that I've downloaded over the last how many years since I've been in college, that's all stored on one of those, and I can pull it up anywhere. I've got a number of movies, Marvel, Captain America, it's on there, and I can, anywhere in my home, open up and stream that live from that NAS system. It also acts as a backup for the photos that I take with my phone. So that app on my phone, as soon as I hook up to my home Wi-Fi network, when I get back from wherever I'm at, it'll start uploading a copy of those photos to that NAS system so that I can just delete it off my phone, but I've still got access to it, and I can easily get on my computer and pull that off and edit it or do anything else that I want to do with it. So there's a lot of benefits to this kind of thing. It's called a lot of people just call it a personal cloud, which is kind of basically what it is. And I like that much more than trusting a third-party service to store all my files up on their servers, just because I don't trust people. I like to have control over my own data, so having it on physical drives in my data closet or offsite where I have access to that anytime that I want to do it, without having to pay somebody a monthly fee or worry about them changing the terms of their services or just closing down and my data's gone. I'm not saying don't use those plans. I'm just saying my preference is using a system like this. Now, these aren't necessarily cheap, but in the long run I find that it's actually a much more economical option than paying a monthly fee to host things on somebody else's system. So I want to show you really quick with this QNAP. You can get these with drives installed in them or bare without drives, and that's what I did. Was I pulled out a couple of the hard drives from the Easy Store things. Reason for doing that is at various times you can get those Easy Store drives on discounts and actually get a really high capacity drive at a great price. If you don't want to mess with that, don't mess with it. You can get a 8 terabyte RED Western Digital NAS drive for about $180 now, I think. And they have capacities up to 14 terabytes, so you can get a massive amount of storage in a system like this. What I have set up in my data closet is actually called a mirrored RAID array. Fancy term is, but it has 4 drives in it, 4 8 terabyte drives. 2 of them are linked together to create a 16 terabyte drive. So are the other 2, but those 2 sets of 2 are mirror copies of each other. So anything that I upload automatically goes to a backup. So there's 2 copies of everything on those 2 sets of 16 terabyte drives, if that makes sense. This one I will probably set up as just a single 16 terabyte, so it's a third backup copy. So let me show you how this goes together. Opens the box. Ta-da! Ta-da! And of course they tape all this thing in a big freaking bag. Okay, so here's the box, and it has these 2 drive bays, and it's really pretty simple. You can just pop the front up like that and slide out this carrier. Ta-da! And you can see inside there a big dark cavity. Okay. Carrier that comes out of the NAS system, and here is my lovely hard drive. Basically, all you do is flip this over, and you want to line up. There's 4 little holes, and the NAS system comes with these tiny little screws. And you just go in there and put those in to secure that drive into the carrier. So I'll go through this, do this for both of the 2 drives that are going into this system, and then we'll load it up. Okay, now we have 2 mounted drives that can go back into that NAS box. Okay, it really is that simple. Once you have those drives mounted into that carrier, you just make sure you have them facing the right direction and slide that back in and close the latch back down. Like so. So now this box is loaded up and ready to plug into my network with the Ethernet port. So we'll get that set up, but I want to just say, you know, once that's set up, you can program Lightroom to automatically dump a copy onto this and then have your working files on your local computer, and you're pretty well set at that point. Now, one more thing about backups. With Lightroom, Capture One, whatever program you're using, the catalog file is important to backup as well. And for Lightroom, that's what I use. That's what I know the best. The main catalog that you use to edit is usually stored by default in your picture files on your local hard drive on your computer. So wherever your pictures folder is in your system is likely where that catalog file is, unless you've set it to be somewhere else, and hopefully you know where that is. You can find it in Lightroom by searching for it, but okay. You should be making backups of that fairly regularly and deleting the old backups, because they do take up quite a bit of hard drive space. I take all of those and put them onto the NAS system as well, so that I have a backup both on my local hard drive and a backup on the NAS. So there's a duplicate of that as well, not just the photos. Every year I go through and clean out my catalog and archive the old previous year's photos. It depends. Sometimes I'm working on a couple of projects, so I don't actually do that until about halfway through the next year. That's fine. However you want to do that is okay. Everybody has their own preferences as far as that's concerned. But for me, that is what works. And I can go back and reopen those catalogs and edit and pull anything out or search for old files if I need to. The one thing to be aware of, Lightroom doesn't run a catalog off of a networked drive. If it is a direct attached external drive, it'll work, but probably slower than if it's on your physical hard drive inside the computer. So what I do with that case is, if I have to go back to something a couple years ago and either reload or rework some of those photos, I'll pull that catalog file back to my main hard drive and then set it to read the files, the photo files that are on the networked storage system. That does work slower, quite a bit slower, but it's, at least with what my experience is, it's not so much that I can't stand to do it that way. It takes a second or two to load up the entire catalog, and then a few seconds to go through and update each photo as I'm working on it. And once you're in there working on the photo, everything works fine. It's just Lightroom is creating another version of its smart previews and all that stuff to work on. So it does take a little bit of time, but with my archived photos, I'm only doing that on rare occasions when I have a special request, or I remember something from a long time ago that I want to either pull into my marketing materials or create a new composite from, something like that. So it's not something that I'm doing very often and doesn't really slow me down in my experience. Your mileage may vary. I hope that helps clarify a little bit about how you can set this stuff up. Links to a lot of these things are going to be in the description of the video, so they are affiliate links, so I do get a little bit of a bonus if you go by through those. It's no extra cost to you, but does help support me and what I'm doing. Let me know if you have questions. Feel free to shoot me a message or post in the group if you have something specific you want to ask about setting something like this up. All these systems do have a really good help network online and or tech service. I know everybody hates tech service, but I've had pretty good experiences with both Western Digital and QNAP, if I had to call them. Setting these things up as a network drive visible on your computer does take a little bit of work, but it's not that bad. So as I mentioned, at a minimum, make sure you have at least one external drive or separate drive in your system where you're backing everything up, so that if you do have a hard drive failure, you don't lose everything, because that is a nightmare. And I can't stress enough how much I hate getting that message from somebody saying that, oh my God, I may have just lost all my work. Don't let that happen to you. I hope you have a great day. Is there anything else I need to say? I don't know. Blah, 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 blah. It's only taken a year and a half, but I finally have that NAS drive set up and ready to go. Actually, almost 2 years. I got it for Christmas 2 years ago.